Combined, the words, images, characters, and stories that these men have generated have grossed almost $4 billion at the domestic box office alone.
Man, you got some time on your
Definition of a blockbuster. And they are here today to talk about how to write the Hollywood blockbuster, should we all be so lucky to reach that level. I know they need no introductions, but I'm going to do it anyway for posterity. Sitting to my immediate right is the man who created Lethal Weapon, The Last Boy Scout, and The Long Kiss Goodnight, along with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the one and only Mr. Shane Black. Next to him, an Oscar nominee for Shrek, co-writer of the Pirates of the Caribbean series, Aladdin, and numerous other monster films, Mr. Terry Rossio. Next we have another Oscar nominee for Children of Men and co-writer of Iron Man and the upcoming Cowboys vs. Aliens, whose poster you saw on your way in here, Mr. Mark Fergus. And last but not least, Mr. David HAYTER, co-writer of X-Men, X-Men 2, The Scorpion King, and numerous other big projects. David. So thank you all for coming out on this gorgeous day today, gentlemen. I want to start just by asking each of you to talk a little bit about your background and how you fell into this crazy career of screenwriting. Shane, why don't we start with you?
Well, it was different when I started, because I don't think there was the awareness that screenwriting was even available as something you could do. When I grew up, when you saw a movie, you didn't look to the box office in the paper and see how it was doing. You didn't particularly read reviews. If it was in the theater, you went and saw it because it was a movie. And if it was on television, I think there was a feeling when I was growing up that these scripts or these stories just sort of floated across the ether and arrived at your television, but not that there was a place where they actually got written. So the sense that there was a magical process by which everything else got done, meaning film, television, and then there was writing books, was sort of dispelled in college when someone said to me, you know, the screenplay thing really isn't that tough. It's just sort of interior, exterior. And, you know, is it day, is it night? I said, well, what other rules are there? They said, well, there really aren't any other rules that I know of. Just don't fuck it up, you know? And I read a couple screenplays. I read William Goldman. I read Walter Hill. One's very sparse prose, very terse, punchy, captivating prose, really engages you. The other one is sort of chatty. William Goldman is very sort of fun to read, as though you're sort of communicating it to you across a bar stool, you know. I guess across a bar, if it was across a bar stool, you've got to be kneeling.
Had a little too many then.
Yeah. You know, Bill. Then I smashed the styles together, which I liked. I liked Bill Goldman's style. I liked Walter Hill's style. I put them together, and I started writing in a style that I thought combined the best elements of both people. And I hated everything I did. You know, halfway through, I threw away Lethal Weapon. People say, you know, there are some who could still convince me that it needs to be thrown away. That there is something about writing these action pictures that is ultimately and sort of inherently disdainful, or distasteful, rather. That, and I was easily convinced of that. I had friends who were poets, and a poet, one of my friends, Greg, came over one day and said, "Can I see what you're writing?" And I was in my garage writing Lethal Weapon. And I said, "Well, I don't know, I don't think you'd like this very much." He said, "Well, no, what is it? What is it? It's a suspense thriller?" You know, already the condescension, you know, starts to creep in. I said, "No, Greg, look, it's a drug thing, and two cops, and he said, well, let me read it." So finally, he just wrenches it away from me, and he goes off and reads it, comes back with this look on his face, and I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Well, no, it's good, it's good." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, you know, look, it's me. It's just me." He says, "It's nothing. It's not you. It's me." I said, what do you, and just tell me. He goes, well, why do you write this stuff? I mean, it's just this stupid villains. Ooh, he's going to get him now. And it's just, does it interest you? Do you like this? Do you think this is exciting? I mean, is this the kind of story or literature that you would have read and want to repeat and tell? And I'm just sinking and sinking and sinking. So I picked it up and I threw it away in the trash can, the first half of the script. And literally, and then there was an auction recently where someone wanted the script to sell, and they actually sold the first draft, typed draft of Lethal Weapon with the cabbage stains and the coffee grounds, where it had actually lain for a week in the trash, And it would have gotten picked up, but I just, it's more of a testament to how often I take out the trash than it gets. So easy to get sidetracked. But the thing went on and the thing sold, and I'll talk later about how I got an agent and how that part got started and how you can maybe shortcut things or try to maximize your chances. But I guess the message of that story, which sort of just arose in memory, was there's going to be a lot of people who don't necessarily think you're on the right track, but they'll have a list of conflicting agendas in their head, and they're not always your friend. So one of the basic lessons is if you let someone read your stuff, if you ever let someone critique it, make sure they're among the people you trust most intimately, because it's so easy to get someone, even the slightest tinge of a jealousy over a girl, for instance, that you both know, or something about money, anything. Make sure, before you turn your work over for someone to critique it, that you've got someone that you trust and it's got your best interest at heart, that's on a like mindset, of a like way of thinking. Anyway, go ahead.
Kerry?
Tough act to follow, that's all I have. I agree with the point that things were different then, back in my break-in days. And I guess the message I wanted to get across is, I think back then, it was actually more literary based or project based, or a writer could write their way through productivity and through putting stuff out there, and the mechanisms were in place to find that material, and there were development deals and all of that. And as I see it now, that landscape has changed a bit, and now I actually think that the business is a little bit more based on what I would call the means of production. It's like means of production based. You really do have to somehow align yourself with means of production, and then and have that literary material as well. So now it's like a combination of things. Each is a sort of necessary but not sufficient condition. You can't just be a production assistant at Pixar and not have the literary material or the ideas or the concepts. But on the other hand, you can't necessarily, I think, get by with just saying, I'm going to write this screenplay and send it into the system and have my screenplay beat all the other screenplays out there and make its way to the top. Because even if you do that once, if you try doing that again, you're back down, at the start, and the odds are just so against you. So it's, I think nowadays it's that combination of, and actually going back to breaking in, I had a marvelous insight that, looking back, I'm kind of proud of, because there weren't a lot of them back then. And it was the idea of mental real estate. The idea that you gave yourself an advantage if you tied yourself to something that was somewhat known already in the public consciousness. And so for my writing partner and I, that was The Monster Under the Bed. That was our first thing. I was like, there's never been a film about a monster under the bed. Everybody knows about that, but hasn't been a film done about it. And so we wrote a script on that topic. Little did I know then that idea or that insight would grow and grow and grow to the point where now, they're making film deals out of, board games and stuff. Like, they're just grabbing any little sort of half-known sort of, Red Riding Hood or whatever. And now, actually, there's this thing I actually term secondary mental real estate. It's not like you just want to do The Wizard of Oz. Now you do a story about just the Tin Woodsman. Like you could actually now go pitch. Oh yeah, people know about that. So I feel a little abashed that that I made use of that and to see where it's now become. But I guess I would say now more than ever, it's that combination of you really cannot get distracted by the mediocre concept, just the generic sort of thing. You really do have to have that sort of stellar idea for a film, and there has to be this connection, this alignment with what I call the means of production.
Mark?
Yeah, I got started by going to business school because there was no way in, really. I mean, back a while, you looked at what was the path, and like these guys, there was none. So I went to business school because I didn't want to be broke and a loser, and there was really no sort of measure, no goals, no timetable, nothing. So we went out there pretty raw into the world, just writing, and then every now and then, Shane became this kind of rock star writer, and that, for us was a huge benchmark, because it was like, oh, there are writers, and holy shit, it exists, it's respected, it shows that there is a real job there. I mean, right?
For me,
it was this.
For me, it was screw that guy. How do I get to be?
Yeah, right. Well, and then me and 10,000 other screenwriters immediately ran out and tried to be like him, write like him, do what he does, from himself. We try to emulate that, and that's 5 years wasted, because you can't. Ultimately, I'm convinced, other than luck, you really can't write a good script and see it all the way through the movie if it's not coming. And this is completely anecdotal, but if it's not from your guts, from your DNA, sooner or later it's going to run out of gas. So emulating somebody else's writing, anybody else's career, anybody else's style is a waste of time. But you got to do it first. And I got 7-8 really lean years to kind of, and my writing partner, we both did. We were complicit in our sort of delusion that we could kind of ride on somebody else's talent or style or vibe. And so our big lesson was business school, get an accounting job where you can work 4 hours a day and write the other 5 in a cube with internet and copy machine and all that stuff. Basically, don't be assistant to Harvey Weinstein, because you're not going to have any free time. But I was at Showtime where I met my writing partner, and I was in accounting. He was shipping reels back and forth or something. Really like 3 or 4 hours of work a day out of an 8-hour day, and the rest of the time you could write and do coverage for HBO on the side, and do other stuff. But learning by writing and by mainly reading other people's scripts, reading the wall of scripts at HBO, looking for the next great thriller. I mean, I found 2. I found Breakdown, and I found Simple Plan out of 10,000 scripts. And of course, those HBO didn't get those. Those went on to become real, studio films, because they were awesome scripts. And you realize that out of 10,000 scripts, why are there only 2 awesome ones? And you learned a lot by reading everybody else's. So that was basically the short version. I was just flailing along hodgepodge, trying to figure out a way in, and it happened by inches and by tiny little victories over 10, 15 years. There was never any moment where it all clicked. It just kind of, we didn't go away, and at some point they had to deal with us, and that was our strategy. And so that's that. But essentially the idea was trying to be like Shane was like, that's not your story, that's not your path. Finding your own thing was kind of our journey. Like, stop trying to copy Blade Runner, stop trying to copy every great film you love, and try to take a free ride on it. May find your own voice and do your own thing. And every inch forward was an inch forward, and it eventually led to our first job. And there was no real holy shit moment. It's all coming together. It was just persistent. So that's that's the nutshell of mine and Hawk's journey into this. I guess I don't mean to sound it like it's actually real advice I would have loved to have known, because I thought it was a lottery system. You had to sell a spec, and otherwise I didn't know about writing assignments. I didn't know about any of the way the business really works. So finding it out the hard way, actually, what I tell writers now is that you can plot out a strategy and you can brick by brick get where you're going. There's an actual path. You don't have to wait for the heavens to open up and everything happen for you. It doesn't always happen that way for writers. So you can actually make a path for yourself and achieve it, rather than it's something that it's magic and something has to happen all at once. It can be a slow, bloody, miserable process, but you're always moving forward. So.
And now for the other perspective, David. Why don't you tell your story?
Yes, well, I was an intern at Pixar, and I wasn't, but that's how I got my break. I came out here to be an actor, and look how well it's worked out. So I struggled for 10 years and was pursuing acting and studying writing on my own just to sort of understand the process. And I'm not going to get into the particulars of the story because I've told it a million times, but essentially I got a job answering the phones on the movie X-Men, where my friend Bryan Singer was the director, and Bryan is always convinced that the next script is going to destroy his career. And I happen to be, when they say good luck is when opportunity meets preparation, I happen to have been a huge X-Men fan. I'd been writing short scripts and features and things just for myself, and then I suggested an idea to Bryan. He said, good, go write that for me. And long story short, I got sole credit and the movie came out, was a big thing, and suddenly I was a screenwriter. So just do that. No, I also did, even though I loved writing, what Shane said was exactly my perspective, which was, as an actor, the script just gets handed to you. It's created by the gods and it comes down, and there was a whole 10 years where I was like, well, is it okay to change a word, or is this all sacrosanct? And it's not. I just didn't pursue it because I didn't think it was pursuable. And then when I sort of fell into it, I suddenly had a crash course in how to continue in the job. So I would say, to get started anyways, the point of my story is sort of reflected by what Mark said, which is I always feel like get a job in the industry as close to what you want to do as possible. So if you can write coverage of scripts, I mean, that is an immense learning opportunity, or working for Harvey Weinstein. I wouldn't recommend it, but you're at least close to the means of production. You're close to the people that make the decisions and pay for these movies. And contrary to popular belief, there just aren't a lot of great ideas out there. So if you have great ideas, if you have fresh ideas, and you happen to be working in the office, and you happen to get a moment where you mention it to somebody who is able to pull the trigger on a movie, well, you're in better shape there than writing specs and sending them out to agents and whatever. You really want to learn the practicalities of the business and not just, the viewpoint that, oh, I'll sell a spec script and then my life will change and everything will be great and everybody will respect me. That won't happen. But if you get in, you sort of learn the rules and and you get to know people. I mean, that's really more how it works, and that's what I would recommend.
Great. Can you talk about? I mean, each of you, you talk about you didn't have an aha moment, Mark, but each of you had a script or a film that kind of put you on the A-list. Can you talk about how that affected your writing? Did it make it harder for you? Did it hinder you? Did it help you? Did you get suddenly inundated with projects and you didn't have time to write your own stuff? Can you just talk about how success changed your writing? Anybody can jump in. Anybody?
Well, yeah, we'll open it up, but it's weird in a group of neophyte screenwriters, like the problem they have is probably that, what do I do when I got too much success? It's just not going to be the thing that's immediately compelling as a problem today for you. But it does speak to the larger issue of what I think is very paradoxical, which is you'd think if you write a screenplay, you work, you slave, you learn, you sweat over it. By the way, plays are wrought. That's why it's spelled W-R-I-G-H-T, a playwright, not a write, R-I-T-E. Yeah. Because these things are wrought. They are constructed. They are twisted into shape, right? And you'd think the second one would be easier then, or the third one. By the fifth one, you should be... It gets harder with every single script. I don't even know why that is, you know. But you get more insecure. It's like, and the writers also represent this sort of megalomania with an inferiority complex in a way. There's so much of that mock self-effacement, which is insecurity, but really I'm pretty hot, you know. And you'll see it today. But it's a tremendous you're alone in a room. What other studios don't understand? They send you off. It's a black box proposition. They say, we want this. Here's some paper. You come back and it's done. They don't see you do it. You know, God bless actors, by the way. Actors will try their best no matter how bad the script is. Actors get this page of shitty dialogue and they say, okay, and they go to work and they're so good at just... It's almost like, you know, in the 50s you had those guys who would run out and diligently get to work on your car, and it didn't matter if you drove a junk car in, or if it was a Maserati, they're going to run up and they're going to give it the same go, you know? Screenwriting, tremendously frightening process. Alone, at midnight, typing, knowing that at the very best, you know, this might be something that, you know, Mom will like this. If she reads it, you know. I gave my father...
a few notes, though.
Even when I sold Lethal Up, then I gave my dad, he said, you sold a script? I said, yeah, he wanted to read it. I said, oh, here, Dad, I'll leave it for you. I put it on the counter. I came back 2 weeks later, there was a line of dust. I moved the script and the dust line was there. No one wants to read a script. Your dad doesn't want to read a script. No one wants to read a script. It's a frightening, lonely process that gets difficult script by script. The industry derides you. It's just not what you want to do. Do you really want to be here today? It's probably a bad idea. And then I'll say one more thing and then I'll shut the fuck up. I say this a lot. I say, look, you're in a business where there's 93% unemployment at any given time with members of the Writers Guild, yeah? Okay. So that's bad. That's daunting. No one's going to work. 7%, 5%, whatever it is going to work. Well, here's the thing, though. If you have talent, the odds change. It changes everything. Because if you have talent, 93%, no. You go to the head of the list. Talent changes everything because it knocks out the popular preconception. It just completely rearranges your odds. Now, here's the bad news, and that's that most of you don't have talent. And I can say that because everyone in the audience was hearing it and saying, yeah, I think he's right, that guy doesn't have talent. But, so either hang in there or don't, but you better fucking love it. Because it's not going to get easier.
I wouldn't say that I think you're all very talented.
Liar.
No. Well, I will say on the talent issue, I've read. Has anybody read Outliers, the Malcolm Gladwell book? Yeah. This book changed my whole perception of that. You know, natural talent is something you can't control. If you have a facility for words or you have a massive imagination or whatever, that's great. But you also, you know, Malcolm Gladwell's point was to do anything well, you have to do it for 10,000 hours. You do anything for 10,000 hours, you can master it. And I think, and you know, there's a lot of people that work that are horrible. I mean, like, I don't know how it happens, but there's a few guys that you know, do very well, and I'm like, but every movie is unwatchable. I don't listen, Terry, it's not, certainly nobody here. I'm by far the least talented here, but so the original question was, how does success change your writing? I think, I don't know that success changed my writing so much as getting used to the constant, I mean, you go into your room, you're locked away for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, just writing and writing. You have to love what you're doing, and you have to believe in each scene, and each word, each piece of dialogue is crafted. And then you give it to the studio, and you just have to be open to just horror, just a barrage of notes. And sometimes, you know, if you're lucky, you've got a really sharp executive who's really, you know, gives you notes where you're like, yes, you're exactly right. You know, if we do this, that'll be better. But more often than not, you get notes that, you know, oh, well, we don't like this, and we don't really know why, but maybe you could do a thing with a bunny, or a, you know, what if she had a cat? And I'm like, well, she's a pirate, why would she? So I think the only sort of thing you have to be prepared for in success, and even on your way up, is the ability to take notes objectively and to not let it crush your soul. I mean, it will do that, but you have to sort of ignore that, and you know, to be able to hand it out. Shane's right. You hand it out to one friend, they say something that's not necessarily trustworthy. If you hand it out to 3 friends and all of them say the same things, then you might want to start going, okay, that's a problem. And it doesn't mean you don't have talent. It doesn't mean that you're never going to make a great script. If you're able to take those notes and say, you're right, I fucked that up, that is a better idea, then you're going to be a lot more prepared should success roll your way.
One thing that happens, and it's really interesting, if you have a hit movie, particularly if you have it that weekend of the prior to the meeting, because they can remember at least back to that. You walk in the room, and you do get a little bit of a different response. You say, you know, this horror film here thing, maybe it should be scary. You know? And they go, this guy's good. Scary. I should have thought of it. And you might have said the same exact thing, you know, prior to your hit movie, and they'd be like, I'm not so sure about this guy. So the one thing I will say, it's actually a challenge to not let the process invade the job, invade the work. That becomes the battle, because if you're successful, what happens is you take more meetings, you have more opportunities, more scripts, whatever. And then when you sit down to write something, you have to fool yourself into thinking that you're unknown, because that's better. It's better to say, I have to actually write this thing, and I have to solve this thing, and I have to solve it in a vacuum, away from. Because once you start hearing the note givers in your head when you're sitting there writing, you're dead. And I guess the last thing I'll say on it too is that there's a distinction to be made in Hollywood. They say writers are treated badly. I actually disagree with that. I think writers are treated really, really well. I get treated really, really well. My writing gets treated badly. They'll love you. Come on in. Oh, we love that. We want to. Well, we'll hire you for this. We'll even pay you. And then they go, ooh, okay, this scene here. I don't think so. We can't do that. Like immediately, for some reason, that multi-billion dollars doesn't give you any. You can't actually say, well, okay, I have some worldwide success here. No, they for some reason they never translate that respect to the written page, and I still get to this day, turned down, told no, that won't work, why are you doing it that way? The writing doesn't get, the writing gets treated poorly, but the writer gets treated okay.
And I think that's because correct me if I'm wrong, but the executive or whoever is giving you notes on the script is really writing their own script in their head, and then when your script comes in and is not the way they would have written it, which might be good, might not be good, then you get this reaction. It's the idea that anybody can step in and fix your script. I mean, you just get these random people that have not had the same track record giving you creative direction, and I'm always jealous of the DP because nobody messes with the DP. Nobody knows what he does. Nobody knows how to adjust the camera, and nobody's going to go near there. So the DPs just sit back and they watch all the drama, and then they go and they do their art. Imagine if they messed with them in the same way they mess with us.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, because I've actually used that where, you have one of the things that may not be apparent looking at Hollywood, or looking at the films that Hollywood puts out, is the fact that when a disastrous choice is made, or when a disastrous choice is being made, we all know it.
Yeah.
We all know it, and it's not a mystery. It's not like, oh, if only somebody came along and just showed them how to do it the right way. No, the disastrous choice is being made. As it is being made, you can even point it out. You can say, this is a disastrous choice here, and here's how they get you. They go, yeah, absolutely. And they go, what, you just agreed with me. You're winning by agreeing with me. It's a disastrous choice, so we're not going to do that, right? No, well, we kind of have to do it because it's, whatever. And so it is exactly the equivalent. You get there's a high level of frustration to the position we're put in, because it is exactly the equivalent. And I've used this argument. Okay, the DP, if you walked up to the DP and cranked that lens out of focus and said we're gonna put an out of focus movie in theaters, somebody at some point would say, no, maybe that's not a good idea. Get out of here. But they can do the metaphorical equivalent of coming to your story and cranking it out of focus. And you point out to them, and they go, oh, well, but we need to get the film made, or this, the director wants it this way, or we know it's not. It's like, no, you should have the same level of respect on either get. But, the problem is one of them is more overt, the other one becomes a matter of opinion.
Great analogies, guys. You both kind of touched on it. I want to segue into my next question. Regarding working on these big budget studio films, what are some of the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis, studio notes, whatever? Are you ever told to ramp it up or pull it back, or you can just talk about your experiences on working some of these big productions?
Yeah. I mean, on Iron Man, we were actually writing, for the camera 3 hours later most days. It was kind of a come in and start from not from scratch, but really start over. With the entire production team outside the door waiting for pages to slide out under, literally, so they could start breaking the movie down. So that was the challenge of it. But it was great because everything was raw and right out of your head, shaped and through the Downy filter, of course, and then into the camera, and it was a lightning in a bottle, insane mess, beautiful kind of chaos because everything counted right now, and so notes were coming from everywhere, but you really had to process them in a way that when you're writing an assignment for 18 months or something, after a while you don't even remember why you were born, you don't care about the project, you hate everybody. You remember that first day where you walk in, everybody treats you so great, you're like, now you're wishing their death, you hate everyone, because it's just gone on too long. It doesn't take, to me, if you can't crack a script, I don't know what, everybody has their own threshold. If you put everything into a script and you can't crack it in 4 to 6 months, I say it's time to move on. The thing, it's bigger than you. It's a story is a thing in nature, and if you can't conquer it with your set of DNA, then move on. It's not for you. Maybe someone else can. Maybe no one can. But the great thing about writing on fire like that is that literally everything has to be worked out now. It all has to fit in. The structure has to work. Everything has to work, and I think that kind of pressure is awesome for writers. I think the biggest problem for most writers is they don't have a paycheck coming and they don't have a deadline. You have a paycheck and a gun to your head, writer's block it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as writer's block. It's a luxury of too much time, too many ideas, too much imagining, researching. And you give me a spec, I'll research it for 6 years before I outline it because I can, and no one cares if I ever write it. But the beauty of that kind of production writing that is chaotic, if and I guess this is the big if you have an amazing star, an amazing director, an amazing DP, if the people around you, Avi Arad and Kevin Feige, if it's going through a filter where everybody, we don't all agree on everything, but if it's awesome people through the chain, you got a chance to make something decent. If there's one kind of broken gear in that machine, and someone's pulling in a different direction, then you're in serious shit. But it can really come together. I guess the whole point of this story was pressure. Pressure seems to unlock the good stuff. So pressure. If you want to finish that script you can't finish, find someone in power, promise them that you're going to give them the greatest script in 6 weeks, and then make good on that. Like, put yourself in a corner and then figure out a way out of it. That's how you'll end the writer's block and the thinking too much about stuff. So, and that works really well in production, I found anyway. It was a gift to, at the time not, but looking back, you're like, that's why we got some lightning in a bottle, because everybody was scared shitless. We had no time, and it had to be done by 12 o'clock, and boom. And so everybody pulled out their A game, or at least tried to pull out their A game and see what happens. So. What was the question? I may have wandered.
No, that was great.
Pitfalls of working with us within the studio, and do they pull apart the script? What you said, do they pressure you? And I think you're right about one thing. I think it's all about fear management to some extent. You get to the point where the pressure is so laughably intolerable that all you can do is step up, in a way. But people would give me notes on a script, and it's a silly script, like Long Kiss Goodnight, it's a little thriller or whatever, but they'd give me notes, and I'd start to cry, I'd listen, and I would just go in the room, and I would just absolutely start to cry. And I thought, this is not what my father would want, this is not going to sustain me, or throughout this career I've chosen. So I had to learn to, because they give you these notes which are devastating, that just rip the hell out of it. And then so let's go get some drinks, and they want to go out to dinner. And all you can think is, I'm gonna go lie down in the fucking woods. And you have to sort of sustain yourself in the midst of a tremendous fear, because those people who came and give you that bad comment that you can't stand, that's their job that day. They thought of that comment the night before, and they thought, I can't wait to get there to work tomorrow, and they're all meeting long, they're just waiting to say their thing. That thing they thought of about how I think he should come in the door instead of going outside. And it's their job today to say that. It's not about the script, it's not about making it any better. It's just about, that's their level of participation. Our level is, we have to step up to a level of responsibility. It's like, if I'm a guy, I can make a mistake as a citizen. I could drop a gun that goes off and shoots someone. I'm a citizen. I'm sorry I did that. If you're a cop, you can't do that, because you've agreed to be held to a higher standard. We, as the writers and creators of these types of movies, have agreed that our fear is not as important as the finished product. And when we write, or when I write, I sit there crying and fretting until something on the page becomes momentarily more interesting than my own fear. And that's how I write. So I'm afraid, I'm scared, I can't do it, I've been doing it for 5 minutes, I just didn't realize. And that's the task. Like he said, you have to go back and become fresh again. You have to, almost in the face of all this studio interference and hype and all this billion-dollar stuff you see on a giant set in front of you, you have to say, I'm nobody and this is a story. This is a story I'm trying to tell. I read this when I was 5, or a version thereof, and I'm trying to recapture that imagination and that magic I felt. And all these guys can go dangle. It's basically me and the page. And you gotta forget about the money. No matter how much you get paid, if you start thinking, oh, this is an expensive assignment, no. Every assignment's the same. You either do it or you don't. You put in the work or you don't. But that to me is what the process so much is comprised of, is simply managing that inner voice that is so often composed, I use comprised twice, of doubt and fear. It's terrible. I mean, you guys are very confident, that's great. You're here, you look robust. I'm not confident, so I have trouble. And when I sit down to write, I get scared and I weep. But it goes away when I realize how important the process is and how important that finished script is. And then I become a Superman.
I do absolutely believe that the second I ever think I know what I'm doing, I'm in trouble. That it really is that lack. I think one of the hardest things to do is to look at your own work as the way that you look at other people's work, where it depends on how quickly you do it. Sometimes you write a word, 2 words, 1 line, whatever. That's your creative self. very quickly I switch over into assessing that and seeing how does it land. And it's a exercise almost I have to put myself through, and now it's kind of second nature. But when it comes to the actual working at the page there, what you have to do is you have to say, here's a moment, here's a line. It exists in the context of the greater story. What does the audience know exactly at that point? And then at some point you simply turn everything into white, blank, whatever. And if the words land, the cat chased the squirrel up the tree, you have to actually imagine how those words will land to somebody who has no idea what you have in mind or where it's going. And if you can force yourself into that level of sort of pure objectivity and say, oh, when somebody reads that, they're going to see a cat, and they're going to see a squirrel, and they're going to see a tree, and they're going to see chasing. And then you say to yourself, well, what if you say the squirrel ran toward the tree, squirrel running, tree, chased by, over the shoulder, the cat. And you go, oh, is that better? Is that worse? Should it be an armadillo? Like you don't know. But until you can somehow find that space of just saying, all it really is how does this one moment land to that sort of imagined future audience or the future reader? Everything else has to be pushed away. So it doesn't matter whether you had a film do well or whether you just had a pitch that bombed or whatever. That's really irrelevant to that moment of creating that story.
David, do you have any thoughts on working on the big budget projects?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I was fortunate enough to do X-Men the way Mark did Iron Man with many of the same people. And, working on set, writing the day's pages, and that is, without question, the most exciting, especially if the people are really talented, which they were. That's certainly the most exciting way to go about it. But just, your original question was about the process on a big movie, and X-Men, while it was a big movie, was a $75 million budget, and we found out that the people at Fox, when they say 75 million, they mean 75 million, and they don't mean a penny more, at least on this one. And so I wrote a scene for the first film where Rogue was walking across she was getting to know all of the children at the mansion, and she's walking across the field and she sees the basketball court, and there's this beautiful kid, this blonde guy who catches her eye and sort of gives her a wink, catches the ball, runs towards the basket, dodges this guy, there's this huge guy in front of him, and he leaps up and his shirt tears and the wings come out like this, and it's Angel, and he dunks the basket, comes down, and the wings sort of hit the thing, and he looks back at her and gives her a smile, and it's just this badass moment. So I wrote that and I handed it off, and literally 20 minutes later, Mike Fink, the visual effects producer, was at my door, and he goes, $400,000. And he puts it on me. So he puts it on my desk, and I'm like, yeah, but it's so good. And they're like, yeah, well, it doesn't move the story really. So if you watch the film, you'll see her walk past the basketball court, and you'll see there's this kid, and he was triplets. It was just this 3 little weird-looking kids, and Brian Singer, the director, said on the day, he goes, okay, you stand here and pass the ball to your brother, and you pass it to your brother, and then you throw it at the basket. And so they just used the computer to wipe him, and he would throw the ball to himself. It cost, 25 cents, and I think they CG'd the ball into the basket. So that's that's what my great scene became.
We were talking about this, well, David and Mark and I were talking about this earlier. Each of you is hired to rewrite. I mean, we all know that these big tentpole movies have dozens of writers on them. Each of you has been hired to rewrite your other scripts, Mark and David particularly. Can you talk about...
You for my mortgage.
Yes. Can you just talk about, first of all, besides just your track record, can you talk about what you bring to the table on these rewrites, what the studios look to you for, what are the skills we should be honing so that we could get considered to rewrite these things?
Actually, I'll jump in on that because I have I can start us off on that one. It might be a little known fact, but my writing partner and I were actually offered X-Men and Iron Man.
Thank you for not taking it.
And we were offered X-Men, and based on the production schedule and everything, I mean, I don't know if offered is the right thing, but they sort of say, "Are you interested?" or whatever. And I looked at it and I said, "This can't be done. No way, it's too hard." Iron Man was the same way. Like, how do you solve this? How do you make this good? So that's my connection. Like, we couldn't figure those out. Those seemed like too difficult of a proposition. But yeah, so
I think it's important to know.
I'll turn it over.
When you see those, like you either have something to add or you don't. I mean, you know, yeah, and I think
Just couldn't solve it.
Yeah.
You know?
I had no choice.
Yeah,
It was either solve X-Men or die alone.
yeah,
But I actually thought it couldn't be solved. Like, I just thought there was no way to actually pull it off. But so good job.
Are you saying it was done? It was pulled off?
He didn't say that.
He never done a run.
Never.
Yeah, I thought it came out great.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah, it did, and I think it's kind of weird. We're always getting thrown to and just as often as you get to rewrite someone, if you feel like you have something to add. I mean, I always think that we were lucky on a couple of our things, Children of Men. We had our layer and then another layer from the director and his writing partner, and sometimes it all works where they come. The idea is to build on the other writer's work, not to say, if you feel like you want to rip down what they did so you have a better chance at credit, you're taking it for the wrong reason. If you honestly can make a great story by building on what the other writer did, then it's something you should consider. But I think there's a lot of weirdness about, and then you think a story's done. I mean, I've never walked away from an assignment thinking it wasn't done. I felt like this is the last word. It's beautiful. It's perfect. Let's just make this frickin' thing. And then a week, the director comes in and he goes, like on Akira. He's like, and it's gone. It goes to another writer who has what the director needs, and you just have to let go, and you can't control that. So as much as as frustrating it is for you, just know that you're frustrating someone else by working on something they felt was really done. I think the thing is not to be cynical about it. There is a lot of cynicism about people rewriting each other, but if you see where they need it to go, and you can build another layer on to a great script, but they want something slightly different, you can do that, then you should do it. If you want a paycheck, or if you feel like you're going to mess with somebody else's, everybody walks away, and it's very deeply structured, and you can't just rip stuff apart and move pieces around and make a new script. You got to go really deep in there, and if you don't believe in the project, then a paycheck, it's not worth the paycheck, because the work is going to be a mess, and it's going to reflect on you, and it's going to hurt what the other writer did. And there is a certain respect to your other writers that I think people don't know about. I think writers, do respect each other when they read each other's work and are hired to take that writer's work to a new place. It doesn't get reported much. I think everybody likes to think that everybody just wants to shit on each other. I mean, and sometimes you're put in a position, if somebody throws a punch at you, you pick up a baseball and you're like, yeah, fuck you. And next thing you know, it's a brawl of writers, and it doesn't reflect well on anybody. But essentially, I think there's a lot of respect among writers. At least that's how we approach it. And I feel like the writers who have taken our stuff and tried to move it forward have shown us the same thing, where they're not trying to slash and burn. They're trying to see what we did and see if they can get this damn thing made.
Let me just say, Mark has rewritten me twice on Iron. I think I was the writer just before you on Iron Man. And then I was 15 writers earlier than you on Cowboys.
Yeah, Cowboys is.
Is there anyone who hasn't worked on Cowboys?
Right.
No.
The good thing about that job is I thought it was a graphic novel. I had no idea of the history. Had I known, I think we would have run screaming from it, because knowing that it had such a history, but luckily we were just coming off Iron Man, and we were so clueless, and they threw us this graphic novel, which it had essentially the title, the concept, awesome, And then I realized, oh my God, this has been around for a long time. It's had
Well, and that we were writing it
Oh,
before
God.
there was a graphic novel. Like
Right,
we were writing
right.
it when it was a concept,
Right,
and then they
yeah.
made the graphic novel. And
Right.
so
yeah,
that was the whole thing.
it's insane that we you know the credits on that one, as you know, were about as I think people quit the guild because of that. It was so complicated to figure out and to navigate, and you know these rules are pretty brutal, but you look at you know and hopefully. You know, when you see these projects, I think Cowboys and Aliens was destined to be a movie because it's a really cool idea that hasn't been sort of indelibly done yet, and so it kept coming back for another turn. But you know, you know, I just can't believe that it took that long and it took that many writers to get it. And I think it was the opportunity. What was if Men in Black was big this month, and I heard your version is probably much closer to our heart, which is dark and cool and badass Clint, Unforgiven kind of Western. But there were times when it was going to be, it was going to be funny, it was going to be Men in Black tone. Yeah, and so the project kind of changed with the times, and crazy. But again. You will, if you get into the rewrite game, you will be rewriting your friends and your colleagues, and there is a way to do it with class and respect, and try to build and not destroy. And I think I just like to put that out there because it just seems like there's a lot of negativity out there about that process, and it doesn't always. It hasn't been our experience that it's about destroying another writer's work.
I think that's somewhat perpetrated by the powers that be as well. I think they sort of keep us at arm's length and away from each other so that we can rewrite each other. The only reason I brought it up is because Iron Man is really the only example of a time when I've been rewritten and I went to see the movie and I said, oh, that's better. They really nailed it,
Yeah.
And so it was a superb job, and I didn't begrudge him at all.
Just real quick, I would announce, Rob Greenberg, you need to move your car.
Yeah,
Or
Rob,
you will be
what
towed.
Listen.
So, Rob, please go move your car now so we don't get in trouble. Anyway, there he is.
Right over there.
We can all mock you. Thank you.
That's the guy that ran over my foot.
Okay, Terry, Shane, did you want to add on this about rewriting?
I try to have as much respect as possible, and it just doesn't happen. People get angry. You can try to be respectful, but you also have to do what they hire you to do, which is apply your template to something. And you do it as gracefully as you can. As he said, you don't rip out scenes right and left because they've structured it a certain way for a reason. You try to understand and appreciate what they did and why before you then go, reluctantly, I have to adjust this. And they're still going to hate you. So.
One thing that comes to mind is understanding the really true difficulty of getting a film to the green light. I think there's this presumption that says, oh, if we just tweak the script just right, maybe this version or this change, whatever, then it'll somehow tip over into production. And it's essentially, because we're writers, we all believe in that it's material based, and that if a script doesn't get made, it's because it's not quite right. And they'll say that. Scripts are these horribly indefensible things. They can hold up a script and say, it's a little dry. What does that mean? Dry. I can put some water on it. That's a little, complicated, a little complex, and it's like, okay, that's a good thing. I like complex movies. So it's very, I think, important to understand that, say, all those incarnations of Cowboys and Aliens, or the other project that was around for so long is The Princess of Mars, which I don't know had how many writers on. What happens is you have a studio, and the studio has executives, and it's not quite as bad as it used to be, but say at Paramount, it used to be there were 14 executives with 10 projects each. That's 140 projects in development. They're going to make maybe 3 or 4 movies. Or maybe 7, but one's taken by Spielberg and one's taken by Cameron already. So now you've got these executives who are all sitting around a table on Monday morning, all in competition with each other, all trying to assemble the necessary elements together, the star, the director, the script, and who are all frightened for their own careers, and they're all fighting to try to get something into production. Well, if a script, they all have to create the illusion that the project is live and ready to go, and and that there's momentum. They all speak about momentum and energy and all these odd things. Like, I look at it and go, does the story work? But so what they want to be able to say is, oh, cowboys and aliens. So we have a draft coming in. And they go, oh, good, we got a draft coming in. Yeah, because a draft coming in is momentum and gives them, and it's all. I actually am not opposed to it. It's what they have to do, and I respect them. They need sometimes to reset, bring a draft in, see what directors are available, what stars are available, and they need to put together this very complex machinery that is a potential tentpole pop culture phenomena, and it's not easy. But sometimes the rewrite is more about giving them an opportunity to go back to a particular director or go to a new director or do something else just to get the film made.
Yeah, there's also a feeling, which is unfortunate, that it's like a magic, it's a superstition box. It's like a blessing. You say, shit, we're not sure about the script, put it through Carrie Fisher's typewriter, give her $1 million, better, And they don't even know what she's doing to it, but they think, well, it's the woman's touch. We want a woman's touch. And they throw it at someone for $1 million, and somehow the expenditure allows them to feel better. It's almost a sort of a written placebo that allows them now to feel like they've done work on the script. And quite often, these rewrites, these endless rewrites on Last Action Hero, where they would give it to someone just so, like you said, they could have another draft coming in. And it was only to just assuage their own insecurities more than it was to address any specific point with which they were unsatisfied in the script.
Let's touch on a question that is probably on the minds of everyone in this room, besides you four gentlemen. For an unknown, unproduced writer or someone with just minimal credits picked to, or at least considered to write a tentpole movie or a big budget movie, is it writing a big spec that gets noticed? Is it just grinding your way up with low budget films? What?
I think that if you can come up with an amazing new world or whatever, that suddenly, I think the mental real estate thing is so prominent now that I think that anything that represents your voice, I think we got hired because we had a particular spin on things that people hadn't seen before. And it's a voice that you can apply to Iron Man. We've got all the Broken projects. That was our niche. Books, Scanner Darkly, Children of Men, things that are not really here nor there. They're not a thriller. They're not a drama. They're kind of one-winged birds, and give it to the new guys. And that was, but it became our niche, and we had a weird enough voice that they thought we could add something. And so we never sold a spec. We never, we just got a chance to do an assignment based on what we had written as samples for ourselves that reflected, and the first one was First Snow, which I later made as a film, but it just represented what we were about. It was the first time we stopped trying to copy people and just wrote our own thing. They said, holy shit, cool, you guys are interesting, we'll bring you in, and did all the meetings, got our first job, got our second job, and the thing that got us in was we weren't even represented yet, nothing, we won a few contests, whatever, but some scripts that sounded and felt and read like something they hadn't seen before. That got you the meeting, that got you the job. So that, I think the key is get your unique voice down on paper, spare and beautiful and simple, and it represents you. If it's a tiny film or a big film or in between, I don't think it matters so much, so long as it represents your view of the world and the thing that they have not heard or seen before, because they can apply that. They'll now have to see, can this person take notes? Can this person take direction? Can they apply their weird little indie voice to, a cool Marvel hero that they're trying to resurrect or whatever? But the voice is what they'll, at least in our case, that's what got you noticed first. That got you in the room, and then you had a chance to step up in the world and vie for bigger projects. So put yourself, blood, guts, and all on paper representing what you got and get it out there. And that's more important, at least from where I'm standing, than writing a great story that they want to snap up and buy and make right away. Because that happens so much less, I guess, these days. I mean, again, we never sold a spec, we just sold ourselves and our weird look at things, and that was enough to get, you just got to get in that room. Then you can pitch for, you know, these assignments that are way, way, way out of your league, but you can now get in the room and have your say, and they'll say, shit, wow, the new guy's got something interesting there, maybe we'll give him a shot.
Anyone else?
Here's some practical advice. I'd say stop, to the best of your ability, stop being alone, stop writing alone. Not to take on a partner, but what I'm saying is when I came up, I had a group of people that were friends of mine before we ever decided to write for film. In college, we just hung out together. We were very passionate about movies. We'd talk all night long, make our own little films. We had this kind of fraternity atmosphere of open 24 hours. We'd drive by and the lights on. We'd go in and argue over, you know, Hitchcock for about 2 hours. There was a lot of that kind of camaraderie that then when we started to succeed, one of us would get an agent and he'd say, hey, give me a piece of your work and I'll give it to my agent. And we'll see if we can bump you up the ladder. And then I in turn would say to someone, hey, look, I think I could get you up the ladder, come here. And we would pull each other up, sort of leapfrog our way into the business by virtue of recommending each other. And it came from being part of a group of like-minded people that were sort of in the boat together, even if it's a sinking boat. You know, I'd rather drown with like, this is terrible, we're drowning. I know, man, me too. And you just have someone right there with you, you know. The point of it is that it's so lonely. Like I said before, it's just writing is not, you know, on a good day, writing is you're in a room and you're not even in the room. You're off in your head somewhere. They call that autism or psychosis in other places, you know. So, writers groups, form a writers group, join a writers group. Get your friends to swap pages back and forth. And none of this bullshit about, hey, you took my idea, I'll sue you. You know, come on. No one's taking your ideas. Just give somebody an idea. Say, here, you want this bit? Take it. Good karma, you'll get another bit in the future. Just love each other, be groovy with each other, and make a group out of it, and stop being so alone. And then when one of you succeeds, they can necessarily, you know, reach down, maybe help the others. The other quick proviso is you're not going to sell your first script and have it made. It's not going to get made. The first script is a sample, generally. I don't know anyone who's had their first script, except Callie Khoury, propelled into, you know, stratospheric success. But the first one, they'll read it, they go, you know what, we don't want to do this, but we like the writing. In fact, you know, it's a pretty good voice, like he said, so would you like to come over and do something else? Just make that first script as good as you can, and don't come to California and say, hi, I want to be a writer. Do you have a script? Well, I got some ideas and a treatment. No, you have to have 2 scripts under your belt, your best work. You know, opportunity meets preparation. They say, we need a script. You yank out your best work and you put it in front of them. You don't say, I have an idea and I read a book that I'm trying to get an option on. No, you have to have something ready for them. It's that degree of eagerness coupled with just the ability to ask for help and not be alone, to actually drain your friends and allow them to drain you, you know, or power each other as the case may be. And I think that will help you. I think joining a writer's group, forming a group of friends that's like-minded, that sees things with a sort of mutual ambition, and being helpful and not being stingy and not being petty or sort of, you don't need to be petty in the business. It's so easy in LA to walk out of a movie. I see this all the time. So, well, that movie's not going to make a dime. It's like, oh wait, sir, excuse me, you're in LA and you just said something negative about the movie business, kind of rolled your eye. Boy, that must be tough for you to be in this city and to be negative like that. That must just be the hardest thing, is to be so negative and catty and snarky in LA. No. You love everybody, love everyone in this fucking room. We're all the same. I envy you because I'm 49 years old. I'd rather be out there, sitting in the audience with that hunger and that innocence that you have. Instead of, you know, I don't have anything to teach you. I'll just tell you what I did. But meanwhile, I want to be you. We're all the same. So everybody love each other.
By the way, the Scriptwriters Network does run writers groups all over town, so check out our website.
Let me just add one thing, which is I think the business has become, a lot of people are saying this, business has become a case of the big movie and the little movie. And there are the big franchise type things, and then there are the the King's Speech sort of smaller films in terms of the economic model that's going on out there. And I feel so strongly. I believe in concepts. I'm just not necessarily from the point of view of a working writer, but from the point of view of a writer trying to break in. There's this phrase: you have to win the race before it starts. If you arm yourself with a concept that is so compelling, certain concepts, you talk about, what are the odds of this script making it? How many, there's 2,000 scripts that a production company looks at, they only are going to option 2 of them, well, no, not each script doesn't have a 1 out of 1,000 chance. One script has a 100% chance because the concept is so good that everybody is going to be appealing, and the other scripts have 0 chance because the concept isn't something that people are going to, want to hitch their wagon to. So recognizing that it's a game of the big movie and the little movie, you can break through into that big movie level with the right concept that will, get you in the room. Or, I would say, rather than put yourself into that Darwin sort of survival of the fittest sort of, there's a million screenplays out there, I think mine's going to beat them all out somehow. In a town where they don't read screenplays, or can't visualize movies from them. The other route is, I actually do feel, go the small movie route. Because you sidestep all that other competition, you put together your own team, find a great producer, find a great director, become a director, and means of production. You have to align yourself with means of production somehow. So either go big or go small.
Right. Do each of you still write specs, or do you do all your stuff on assignment now?
I prefer to get paid. But
Good philosophy.
Well, I started a production company, so there have been a couple where, I own the concept. We seek out the concept. It's got some basic thing, and I will on occasion write it for nothing, knowing that if it gets made, I'll get paid. But I don't do it for fun.
You do both. I think if you can, you try to. And I have a partner, so you can tag team, but. Thing is to you can get lost in the assignment if you can spin a few plates and keep really fresh mentally by changing gears on original stuff where you don't have to answer to anyone, and then an assignment where every freaking line has to be vetted through a tent of 40 people. If you do both, you get a balance and you stay sane, and they both teach you different things. The other thing I would say about the assignment stuff. The more constraints put on you, the better. I mean, even if they're crazy constraints, they usually make you a better writer, because the more people whack down your ideas or say no or put a wall up or make you detour, you try to find awesome solution, like Shane said, actors do. I think if anyone wants to learn how to write, watch actors do their thing. That will make you see the kind of bravery that they put forward in the face of the abyss. I mean, you go back to your writing, you're not nearly as scared anymore. But the process of turning shit into gold, or trying to, or finding a way, or sometimes the more ridiculous constraints put on you, the more you reach for stuff, and you're finding really cool solutions that make you a better writer, and you never would have got there unless you were backed way into a corner, way out of your comfort zone, and you just get somewhere. The discomfort and the need to have this not suck gets you to a new place that allows you to take something really great away from a terrible situation. So everything can be, bad note it's an opportunity to be a genius and figure out something that pleases everyone and work out that way, but it's always an opportunity. So the more people are trying to crush your dreams, the better, in a way.
For me, both. It's great to procrastinate on one project by writing another, and just go back and forth.
Shane?
I think a spec usually represents more of a passion project. I'm terrified of writing is more of a. I don't know if I've even adequately projected how terrifying writing is to me.
You did a good job.
I never come in with confidence, no matter what the project. There's a miracle place about a month in where I suddenly realize I'm showing up for work without fear. And I don't even know how it happened, because you sort of get more interested in the story. But there have been spec projects I've worked on for years where I thought, if I get through this, if I even finish this, I'll never be afraid of anything again, you know. Spiders, no. Snakes, nothing. Because this will be the scariest thing that ever happens to me, is facing this blank page every day. And so specs are tough, you know. Rewrites are tough. I'm afraid I'll fuck it up and I'll look at it and say, we trusted you, you know, we thought you were someone. And this other writer wasn't even that good and you're worse. You know? And yeah, it's just all terrifying. But at least the spec script you can bury at midnight and no one will know. If you cock up a scene or two, you can then have someone read it and fix it, you know. If you're delivering scenes to Robert Downey 2 minutes before shooting and they're bad, then you're stuck, you're caught. So it's about being fraudulent. You caught out being a fraud. I'm terrified someone's going to come to my door and say, you know, we found out. You have to go pump gas now. Some other asshole's going to write scripts. Sorry, man. I just feel that way all the time. Like they're going to catch me being a fraud. They paid me all this money. What? Are you idiots? That's a lot of fucking money. Why are you giving this to me? So, I don't even know. I guess the point of all this is not about specs or not specs. It's all terrifying and it's all frightening. The passion you bring to a spec script ultimately, I think, is more powerful in its way than sort of riding the train of sort of running and catching something that's already moving, which is the assignment bandwagon. So I would recommend a spec script where you just invest a year in just trying to find what it is in you that brought you here in the first place. You want to stay on top, remember to touch bottom, you know. I didn't make that up.
But it's good. Before we open up to questions, just real fast, can each of you just talk about what you're working on right now, just to make us all jealous?
Yeah, I want to know if Shane Black is going to direct Iron Man 3.
I'll know by Wednesday.
Good answer.
That would be seriously cool.
Yes.
I don't know if it will. I mean,
What's about all these superhero movies? I mean, is it just superheroes now, I guess? That's what people want to go see.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to think that with the first X-Men, we sort of broke open the superheroes that weren't Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You know, we sort of proved that the X-Men were big-name superheroes in the comic book world, but people didn't really know it outside of that, and that's why Fox was so concerned about it. And I think that's why Terry was so concerned about it. It's like, this is a weird property, but when it worked, suddenly the studios and the audiences kind of realized there's this whole wealth of great stories that have been written over the past 50, 60 years to be exploited, and they're very visual and they're very effects driven. So I personally, you know, some people are bummed about the overwhelming amount of superheroes out there, but I always looked at it as you know, it's our version of the Greek gods, it's our mythology, it's all this stuff, and I think you can tell great stories. I love, you know, like what you guys did with Tony Stark and Iron Man, to take him from being a warmongering, you know, arms dealer to sort of figuring his shit out. I mean, that's not just about superheroes, that's about our world and you know, practical sort of questions of armament and arms trafficking and all that stuff. And I think that's a pretty cool thing, because with these things you get to reach a much larger audience than with, say, The King's Speech, which is also very worthwhile for the stampers out there.
What is your project now that you're doing?
I'm sorry?
What are you working on?
Yes. Well, I can't say, you're not allowed to say what you're working on.
Okay.
I have two pilot deals at Starz, at the Starz network, which is just sort of ramping up with Chris Albrecht, and so I have a big fantasy show there, and then I have a much darker sort of crime thing, but I can't really get into the details of that. And then I've got a movie that I've been trying to set up to direct for the past 3 years, which is not Iron Man 3, and then I've got this company that sort of produces things. I'm working on a film for Christoph Gans right now.
Terry?
Let's see, I'm working on another Pirates movie. And there's a big space adventure set up at Disney called Lightspeed, which is an attempt to get back out into space and have some fun. A pilot at Fox, and a yeah, just a variety of things. A graphic novel, a play, working on a novel. Lone Ranger is potentially going into production. There's work to be done on that. And as producer, I've got a project set up at Sony that's an animation sort of thing. Yeah, it's the nature of this job, because, for me at least, because it's so hard to get something into production, that I tend to try many avenues, just to. I mean, the thing that a writer has, the one power that we all have, is we're the ones that can actually make stuff up. That's like they've got everything else. We've got one thing. We can be productive. We can create something out of nothing, and that's the one weapon. I always thought that Stephen King would have to be successful because he just writes so much, and so much of it's so good. There's never a chance for him to not be successful. I think that's something to keep in mind. No matter how bad things get or how frustrating it can all be, you can always, on a new day, sit down and create something. And so I try to wield that power because it's the only power we have.
Do you believe in writing every day?
Well, my process is so ugly and horrific. I think it might be worse than yours even, and that's saying something. If you really want to know, wake up and think about writing. Take some meetings, answer some emails. Have lunch, whatever. Do a little research, all those procrastination things. Start to get that sense of dread, that clammy feeling that the
Day's almost over.
Day's almost over, the thing is almost due. You promised it, it's not working out, you don't have a solution, go for a drive. I'm not making, it would be sad. I wish I was making this up. Then, thankfully, the night comes. I don't know why that is, but the night comes, and the night is my friend. Because at nighttime, I can maybe, outside of the cold light of day, convince myself that something can happen. And then the night hours start to, watch the Lakers, beat the Knicks. You got to do that. All these things you have to do. You have to do the dishes. Come on. Dogs need to be fed, etc. Now it gets to be about, say, 10, 11 o'clock. Oh my God, nothing's happened throughout the entire day. A true sense of panic sets in. And then midnight comes, and if you can just get yourself to double click on that icon and open a folder or launch the file, that's a huge moment. Now it's 1 a.m., 2 a.m., you start getting a little sleepy, you start to kind of lose it, whatever. And at some point, but you don't want to give up the day because you haven't written anything, you haven't pushed it forward at all, you've done nothing. Can you just get one line down? And at some point, you feel so shitty that the shittiness of writing doesn't make a difference. Like it just merges right over. And then you push over into just writing one or two things, and then if you can stay up till 3 to finish something, and then repeat the next day.
I work next to the Frolic Room, so the bar right across the street. So I deal with that same kind of thing. But you can just go clear your head in a place like that, and then get back. So whatever works, just keep hours. I think is the main thing. Doesn't matter where you keep them, but keep them.
Yeah, I also am a big fan of Stephen King, and he writes so much.
Like what the hell?
Because he's got 2-3 hours a day that he just does it and turns, and he's got a certain amount of words that he gets out, some ridiculous amount.
But I don't understand. I don't get it. It was a great William Goldman quote. The hardest thing of writing is knowing what to write. I can set aside 2 or 3 hours a day, and if I don't know what to write, what I don't get about Stephen King is he sits down and apparently, pushes out 2,000, 3,000 words a day. How does he know what to write? I need to spend, time trying to imagine the scenes and imagine the structure and figure out the story or whatever, and then I might know what to write, and then I can do it.
Well, what I tend to do is get drunk and at night. No, seriously. You want to be writers, don't you? No, but I'll sit down, I'll have a couple glasses of wine, I'll just write out at night. When I'm feeling groovy, I'll just write out, 3 pages of just free associate. Okay, tomorrow I got to deal with this problem, or I got this scene, or okay, what's going to happen there, and I'll just go and not judge any of it. And then I get up every morning. My assistant knows not to book me any appointments before lunch. And I just have 2 or 3 hours where I wake up, I look at all the nonsense from the night before, I say, okay, that's a good jumping off point, and I just go, and I'm very extremely disciplined because it's so easy to not write, to say, I'd rather take the motorcycle through Mulholland than go through this horror. So I just have worked out a system where I work pretty much every day. Although then Ed Solomon said, they own me during the week, but my weekends are my own. And I thought, yeah, damn, I'm not working on the weekends. So my productivity dropped by 2/7.
Okay, let's open up to questions. Gentleman in the back.
This is for Ken. Can you elaborate more on the alignment of means of production in terms of strategies in that regard?
Elaborate more on means of production. Money. I think it's the big means.
If it were me right now, I would go to CalArts or I would. You'd have a better chance in the long run in terms of strategizing into a career. I think if you went and and created your own animation studio. Animation's cheap. Put together a team, find 5 real talented people, start doing storyboards, and do claymation. Like at the very bottom, I would do that because then you have something to show. It could be creative. It could be dynamic. It could be Nick Park, right? Aardman Studios.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do that. And there's 5 million other people out writing scripts, and you're going to jump to the head of the class because your thing could win an award. It could showcase your writing talents, etc. At the very least, I would do that. Other than that, you just have to get in and start working at places that make films to meet the people who make the films. But that's the challenge. What are the openings that can get you close to the means of production, as opposed to what's another way that I can try to submit my script to somebody?
This gentleman here.
Just want to thank everybody for being here today, and I was wondering how much do you feel an agent plays in getting work in this particular marketplace?
Role of agents.
I think it's unfortunately, or fortunately, it's absolutely necessary. I don't know of anyone who reads scripts just on a sort of buddy system or an over-the-transom kind of submission system. It's almost always the script coming through an agent. So the task becomes getting an agent as much as it does moving to Hollywood, for instance. Which is why I tell people who say, do I have to move out to LA? I say, yeah, you do. You could try it from Texas, but you get 2 strikes. One is you probably don't have an agent yet, and the other is you're not in LA. Maybe I'm wrong. People do it without agents, and people do it from other places, but I don't see it very often.
I'd also say you want to be realistic about, like, once you get an agent, agent's like a SAG card. Just because you get one doesn't mean they're going to get you work. Right. What the agents do and the invaluable service they provide is to keep you connected to the people that actually make the movie. You still have to, motivate these things through your own work, your own energy, your own drive. But the agents will know what's happening in town. They'll know who just got fired, who just got hired, what people are looking for. They'll deal with all of the Hollywood gossip and stuff that you don't really want to be mired in. But that's not going to get you work. It might open doors, and then you go in and you bring your fire and you bring your ideas and to the people, to the means of production people who are, if there's 100 people in town that can get a movie greenlit, I would be surprised, but those are the people you're trying to get to.
Let's see, it's Tom.
Yeah, I have a question for Shane Black. You guys feel free to pitch in, because when you were writing Lethal Weapon, were you thinking in terms of consciously thinking of theme, or were you just focused on the external events? How was that interplay between theme and what's happening?
Yeah, real briefly. It sort of emerged. I would write a bunch of scenes because I had a sense of the shape and the feel of a cop film that I like to watch. But gradually something emerged, and that was the sense of a Frankenstein story. Sort of an urban western where the old gunslinger is this sort of wounded Frankenstein who sits reliving the war, reliving the gunfights in his head, and everyone, because they're in this sort of lull, this sort of gentrified suburban community now, where we think that in our society the West is tamed and they can't hurt us, that evil is somewhere else. But this guy, the gunslinger, knows better, and meanwhile they call him baby killer and they shun him and they think he's weird because of his skills that are so distasteful and horrible. But then violence comes to our classic community. You know, our sweet little lullaby is broken, and then the city all goes out to the gunslinger basically to say, look, we hate you, we despise you, we think you're crazy, but we need you now because you're the only one who knew the truth all along, which is the West isn't gentrified, it's still wild, and now we're fucked because you're the last guy to remember how to handle this sort of thing, so we need you. And that kind of gunslinger thing was what I set out really to do, was an urban western. So I don't know if that's a theme, but it's certainly a concept.
This lady right here.
I have seen at least one of each of your movies at least once, and some more than once, and some every time they come on, I turn it on and watch it again and again and again. My question, every time I see them, I keep on saying, how do they think of stuff like that? Where does it come from? So my question to all of you is, how much of the action in each of your movies was written by you or came during production?
Well, I mean, it depends. Each action sequence you look at is different. I mean, I think most of all action sequences are suggested or laid out to varying details in the script, but something can be created in Lord of the Rings, the first Lord of the Rings. They're going through the mines of Moria, and they're going down that big staircase, and then the staircase is breaking, and they're going. Well, that sequence came from, they built that miniature set, and Peter Jackson said, well, I want to do a sequence here, so he made that up. When I did the opening to X-Men 2, when Nightcrawler attacks the president and goes through the White House, and that whole scene, that's one of the few things, that's the only scene I think I ever wrote for Bryan Singer that didn't get torn to pieces and reworked. It literally, I wrote it, it went straight to the production guys, they storyboarded it, and by the time Bryan even looked at it, it was already sort of laid out, and then he was able to do some visual thing, add some amazing bits to it. So each one is I would say most come from the screenwriters, but sometimes the director can make it up, sometimes the studio can say, oh, what if we had we need another car chase here or whatever. So it's all a matter of the moving.
But to really specifically address what you, because I've heard a worse version of the question you ask is one I would get all the time, which is, do you write the dialogue too? I mean, do you like people come on the set and they just start going, what if I said this? Right. And the truth is, if it's on the screen, it tends to probably be in the script, and you have to make that assumption when you write. You can't leave anything for the director. You have to find the spine, the character, everything that is on the screen, as far as you're concerned writing, is going to be in your script, and you have to make that a certainty.
So you all recommend writing pretty detailed action sequences?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You can't get away with all hell breaks loose.
Well, now, I've been told, Tom Rothman once told me, because I'm very specific in my fights and I make them, try to make them as character driven as possible, and Rothman said, can't you just say they fight?
But see, that's the thing, is I have this idea that characters are characters. We want vivid, wonderful, inventive characters. Also, scenes need to have characterization to them. I like to think of scenes as characters or moments as characters. So it doesn't do any good to just say he slashes left, he slashes right, or he moves back or he moves forward. like, no, that's not it. You have to, that's a dull character. It would be a dull, you wouldn't write a character that way, so why write a scene that way? So you do have to actually give them something, and I like to think of it as a starting off point. You have to at least say, okay, they are, they need to rescue the horses in the water, they need to rescue it. Okay, well, we're going to tip a boat over, put it on top of the horse, swim underneath, and tilt it over. Now the horse is in the boat, and the horse is upside down, but they saved the freaking horse. Okay, like that's at least an idea for something that has some inventiveness to it. It has a visual quality to it, maybe a little humor to it.
I'm sure that would work.
And well, that was an animation film. It worked great in animation.
Oh yeah.
And if that, and then again, the scene, the action of the scene, if it can be designed to reveal character, then it's worth doing in its particulars. And then you say, you want the director to come in and say, oh, here's a better way to do it, or the stunt people, or whatever. You want them to then plus it and embellish it. But you have to give them at least something to start.
But and also, one last thing too, action scenes, the worst thing you can do in an action movie is be able to interchange the action scenes, because the plot stops and here comes the big action set piece. You know, they should be indelible parts of the story, revealing as much in the ongoing, unfolding of information as any character scene. An action scene is nothing more than a chance. Look at the French Connection. Why is that chase so great at the end? Because you find out just how crazy Popeye Doyle is. When you see him swerving past those people and that look on his face, it's more than just the car goes left, the car goes right. It's more than stunt follows stunt, as, It really has to be within the action, a sense of what you're supposed to feel here. What is the feeling this scene should evoke in the audience while watching? What's the visceral effect this action will have on me? And that can't just be thrown back and forth and interchanged. It's specific to a character and a moment in the story.
Yeah, it can be some of the stuff you see people skimming over, or what I used to do in coverage is when you got to that kind of action, incredibly detailed, great action, but devoid of character, devoid of a want or an obstacle, anything revealing of character, and it is eternal. It just goes on and on. 3 pages of dense action without any character beat in it is the most brutal thing to read. So action should be like really well planned, haiku, simple, but it can be complex action, but it has to have character in it. Otherwise, people just whip over it. They see no dialogue, because they're like, it's just action sequence cue, and you could flip it and put it anywhere else in the script, and that bores the shit out of people almost immediately, to the point where you almost have to seduce them into reading good action, because they tend to. I've seen people skip it all the time because it's just bad writing usually.
This gentleman right here.
Hi guys.
Long time
Thanks
ago.
a lot for coming. I really appreciate all your work. This is kind of a loaded question, but maybe you guys can do the best on coming up with an answer. Do you guys, your love for writing and writing for Hollywood, do you guys, you guys have obviously a lot of success up to now. Do you guys have plans to mature into other parts of the industry or other roles such as producing, directing, or in some cases, like sometimes if it gets a little stressful meeting all these deadlines and doing the assignments and going through all that, do you guys ever aspire to maybe doing your own thing, like writing something like novels or something that's not so stressful?
I would like to be a Sports Illustrated swimsuit calendar.
I'll buy it.
That's a good career aspiration.
I want to make it a life's project to put Mel Gibson in every movie.
No challenge.
I want to know if Shane Black is going to direct Iron Man 3.
Finds out on Wednesday.
Actually, I would like Shane to answer that question as somebody who has gone from writer to director, which I haven't done. Any thoughts on what that
Directing
revealed
is
to
fun
you?
and easy, and everyone should do it. It's, look, there's no reality show where a bunch of writers sit around complaining about their royalties. It's just no one's gonna. If you had to characterize writers or these WJ meetings, they don't bellow, they squeak. The director you see is always coming into a party with a girl on his arm, and he's got a drink in his hand. He looks robust and healthy, and that's just a better way to go.
This gentleman right here.
Yeah. Again, thank you guys for sharing your knowledge with us. I'm just curious. You said, I believe, Shane, that you'll never sell your first script. So I was really curious to hear from each of you what your first script was. What was that thing in your gut that you wanted to write first that you ultimately never sold?
My first was a delightful little film called, screenplay, never a film, called Sneak Preview. And the idea was that an usher at a small town theater in a small town had the movie industry arrive to do a off-the-grid sneak preview of their big summer blockbuster that wasn't working, that they needed to do an audience preview for. And at the time, pirates were going to come in and steal the print, and of course the usher, rises to the occasion and saves the day. I think the entire project was based on the delight that we felt that if the film ever got made, it'd have sneak preview up there on the marquee, and people would come up and they'd go, "Well, what's the sneak preview?" And they go, "Oh, it's sneak preview." Well, but what's it called? Still love that script.
My first was a horrible little vampire mystery where a guy's father had died and he comes home for the funeral back to his hometown, and this vampire starts killing people, and you eventually find out it's the lead character, and this was his father who did it to him, and it was this whole thing that I really wrote for myself as an actor, and then we tried to set it up. And this was a mistake that I made. I was like, okay, write something cheap that you can get made or whatever. And I don't know if that's a mistake or not, but I think I sort of capitulated to the forces of practicality over creativity. But in any case, I wrote this script for a director friend of mine, and we had a meeting with this guy, this financier, and he called us to his house, and it's this beautiful sort of house in the valley, and obviously a lot of money, although it didn't have any furniture. He was just moving in or something. And so he sat down and he said, "Boy, this script is terrific. You really scared the hell out of some people with this." And we were like, "Yeah, well, great." And he's like, "So I want to make this, and it'll be great." And we walked out. We were walking on air. This is fantastic. So I was 22 years old, and then we never heard anything from him again. He just disappeared. This will happen a lot. And then through a strange series of events, I got invited to Jamie Foxx's Halloween party that year, and it turned out it was his house. And this guy had just, I don't know, knew the real estate agent or somebody, but he had this sort of backdrop house for this meeting. And I said to Jamie, who had gone to school with a friend of mine, I said, "Did you just move in?" He's like, "No, we were doing some renovations." And some guy just used it as a set. So Shane was right. Yeah, I never sold that, and never will try.
That leads to Terry's, I'm going to dub this actually here and now, Terry's first rule of money people in Hollywood. The one thing you know for certain about any money person in Hollywood that you have some sort of meeting with is that they have no money. And it's the weirdest thing, and it confounds me because there's always the money guy, and that's why you're there and you're all excited. And I probably have been a part of, through friends and myself, maybe 50, 60 of these things, because it's like Lucy with the football. I keep going after it. And I swear to God, the money person is the one guy in the room who has no money, actually, oddly enough. What eventually comes out is that there's another person that is supposed to have the money. They don't have money either, but they might know a third person that you'll never see, and it's usually Germany, Saudi Arabia. Okay, anyway, the money person has no money, just know that up front.
And even if they do, you can meet with people that do have money that are money people, but they will not be putting their own money into the film. Like when you produce, I've been fortunate enough to produce a couple of independently financed films, and I just kept asking, well, okay, so is this person putting up the money? No. That person's putting up a promissory note saying that they will give the money. So then we take that to the bank. Okay, so then the bank puts up the money? No. Then there's a company that will put up the completion funds to do the. Okay, so they're putting up. No. They're borrowing it on the basis of mortgages that have been packaged and sold. Yeah, so there is no money, and you will hear stories of people. They've got $200 million film funds, and oh, so and so's got this.
It's always
so-and-so's
$200
got
or $300.
$200 or $300 million.
That's the exact number.
Yeah, it's usually $300 million. Yeah,
Right,
you got
because
300 million.
your film is only 3 million, so they want to say, oh, well, some other there's 200 million over there. So
Yeah,
you're
it's
set.
just sitting there. This is going to be easy. All we need you to do is a year's worth of rewrites, and then you'll get paid. And oh, it'll be great. And my friend knows Woody Harrelson.
Absolutely. You'll hear it 1,000 times, and it's not real till there's someone said it's not real till you're on a set and there's trucks around you. That's true, but my first film, there was planes showing up with guys with pouches, pillowcases full of money to pay the crew. So it never ends. I mean, if you can get the film made and who knows? Just don't ask questions. If things people keep showing up, just finish the film before it stops and just get it
If
done.
you see women being loaded onto a plane, just say nothing.
Right.
I literally sorry, I don't mean to be overly yappy, but this just happened to me last week where the money for my film, my directorial debut, is all committed. We know where it's coming from. But there's a problem with the bond company hasn't quite approved this, so the people putting up the money aren't quite putting up the money, and our producer is opening up a bank account. And I said, oh, good, so they're finally coming through with the money. No, but there's this woman, and she's got a bunch of money, and she's going to put up $300,000. And I said, why would anybody just put up a random $300,000? Well, she wants to be a voiceover actor, so she's really interested in meeting you, because of my side job, I'm a voiceover actor. So I was like, okay, I don't want to owe some woman $300,000 in voiceover favors to not even have the money to get the movie made. To just get another $300,000 in the hole. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
The gentleman in the back had his hand up earlier.
Hey guys, I just want to say, how many rewrites you guys squeeze out until you go cuckoo, until you say, okay, here's my first draft?
How many rewrites before you actually show it to somebody?
I think it's what these guys said. I usually think by the time I'm ready to show it to anyone in the business, it better be pretty good. I don't, in fact, I let it sit for a while and let a lot of people read it, because I really have to know that first draft, which is yours, by the way, that's the last time it'll be your version. And it's very important that you make sure that it's the best representation of why you sat down on day one to write that project. Whatever put you in that chair, this is your chance to make it its fullest expression. So my first draft is always very carefully labored over, and then, it's like spending 9 months and then just tossing a baby into a fucking bed of lava. But on the night before the sacrifice, you'd hug the baby and...
I mean, I guess I don't understand the idea of a draft, because I know that I tend to work in sequences, and no sequence will ever get out and see the light of day unless it's been combed through and polished and gone over and revised maybe 100 or 200 times, and then eventually, and then the way I work is once the sequences are done, I put the draft together, assemble it, and show it. But because I've imagined the movie, I know how it will read, and so I don't know. Is it 100 draft the answer, or is one?
Like 7. I have a writing partner who lives in Vermont, so we have a healthy long distance thing. I can do my puke of it, send it to him, it comes back, it's different. I love this, I hate this, I'll give it back to him. And you do that till it feels like one voice, and sometimes, it's anywhere from 10 to 100. Based on the material, it's always different. Like Shane, the one thing that should be underscored is every script, like Shane said earlier, it's brand new. You learn nothing. You have no tools going in. It's a do-over every time. The story will kick your ass, and the last one you nailed it in 3 weeks, and different animal. So sometimes you do need the 50 drafts or the endless passes back and forth to get it to feel like you accomplished what the story. It's just sort of when you stop, it's either taken away from you, which is nice because then it's not your choice. But if you have your time until you feel like you've nailed it or you feel like you can't take it any further, and it's nice to have a partner for that because you get to walk away and something happens to it and then it comes back and you get to see it again. And it's a lot of times though, if you're going to do anything that reads really simply, the old, I don't know who said it, but the beautiful simple stuff is the stuff that's been agonized over and just squeezed so hard till there was no way to take it any further. And the better a script reads, the more passes it's been through. So until you feel like you can't do any more or it couldn't get any better, keep going.
Yeah, that's what I really learned from Bryan Singer. You tend to, I don't know why this is, but in your early days, you write and you get to the end of your first script and you think, perfect, this is great, not a note out of place. And that's not true, it's terrible. And you need to really understand that the script is a living thing, should change as you're going through production, should change to the realities of what you've got or whatever actor's coming in, or we thought we could afford this action sequence and we can't, we have to be able to change it, think on our feet, keep it alive, and that ability to rewrite yourself and your ability to look in and say, it's the middle road, not to look at it and go, everything's shit and why should I even continue in this business, but to be able to look at things as objectively as you can and say, that's not as good as it could be. That's the first idea. What's the idea 4 or 5 steps beyond that will accomplish what I want to accomplish, but they'll never see coming. And the ability to self-edit and the ability to self-rewrite will allow you to get a sense of when the draft is ready to go out. And it can be 100 drafts, it can be 7, but it's never going to be 1. If you think, I'm just going to write it out, get to page 120, and it's going to be perfect, you're fooling yourself. It just doesn't work that way.
A couple more questions. This lady right here.
What was your biggest, anybody, thank you guys for coming, your biggest surprise when one of your characters came to life? So that is a difference between you and us.
Surprise when your characters come to life.
When you watch, I'm sure Mark experienced this on Iron Man, when you watch amazing actors take on you come up with lines of dialogue that you think, oh, well, this will work, or this will sound good, and then Ian McKellen says it, and you're like, oh my God, there's just such a whole other level, and that's why, the studio's agonizing over specific lines of dialogue. Something can read awkwardly on the page, and some actor can do it incredible justice, bringing new layers to it. Or you can write something, conversely, that reads so beautifully and really flows on the page, and then it just doesn't sound like real talking. It doesn't sound like somebody would actually ever say this. And so that's the surprise for me, when you see the characters go from the way you envision them to being performed by truly great actors is a pretty stunning thing.
Yeah, that is really it wasn't surprising, sort of like Iron Man. We all loved Robert as an actor, but I think what blew my mind on that was he was a movie star. He was communicating to everybody. It was a performance that not only just brought the humor to it, which brought it to everybody. Even though we wrote a real asshole who was morally bankrupt and really had a lot of debt to pay spiritually anyway, and Robert kind of he absorbs all that dark shit, but then he brings like an accessibility, humor, self-deprecation, incredible intelligence, all this stuff that you can't write, you can just invite great people to it and hope and then sometimes it's magnified 50-fold, based on the invite you gave them. Here's a good scene, here's a good structure, here's a decent story, and then you have like John Coltrane come in and fucking rip it to shreds and make something incredible you couldn't never have even imagined. So that's just, I think what surprised me the most was that everybody got it. I thought people who loved Robert, loved great acting, would get Iron Man and appreciate what he was doing. But I was really stunned how his reach in sort of that role started it, or seemed to start it anyway. But his reach was to my mom, you know, my crazy stepdad. Everybody responded to that guy through Robert, so that was pretty cool.
I guess my answer to that is to underscore the idea that, boy, man, do we all respect actors up here. And I've been on a set, been looking at the monitors, seen the performance, and then you go watch the film, and you go, oh, that's what they were doing. Oh my God, oh, I had no idea. And what they do is they have conviction, and they ground a scene, no matter how fantastic or crazy the scene. George Lucas, I remember this quote from him once where they said, what did he attribute the success of Star Wars to? And he said, you know what, I happened to cast the film in such a way that every actor had conviction. Say whatever you want to say about any of that group. Every one of them had complete conviction. And that's something I take to my writing, which is, no matter how fantastic or crazy the situation is, outrageous, audiences can smell when you try to goof it up. I can't think of a better word than goof. You can never let yourself do the goof. You know, you just can't. Whether it's a light scene, a heavy scene, dramatic, whatever, to imbue that scene or situation or story with a grounded reality amid the chaos. That's what you have to try to do, because that's where the actor is going to try to go with it.
One more. This lady right here.
Thank you. Thank you guys, first of all, for being here. I'm from New Orleans, and I have kind of come from a a very dark sort of situation in New Orleans. And I've been asked to write it as a novel, and then I've been asked to write it as a screenplay. And the screenplay, I read all these books and trying to figure all this stuff out, how to get it onto the paper. And then the novel is tricky because, when you start writing down your personal stuff, it's really hard. I mean, it's like mind-blowing to go back into this situation again. So I'd like to do it as a screenplay, but I'm not a screenwriter, I don't know, and I'm basically learning how to do it by reading a bunch of books. And
I'll do it.
Talk to me after, then we'll see about it.
Hold on. Don't just jump in with the first writer.
There you go. That's what you want.
I actually was speaking to her before the... Are you looking for how to find a writer for yourself?
Well, I've been asked to do it, and I'm having a really difficult time.
Who asked you?
Several people. I won't name, but you would know who they are, actually.
Oh, really?
You would, absolutely. And
Jim?
Anyway, so with me being as novice as I am, this is like the most ridiculous question in the world, but it's simplistic. Do I take a class? Do I get another book? What do I do? I want to do it as a screenplay. But should I start it off as a novel?
That's what I met my writing partner writing a book called Consequence. He wanted to write his Marathon Man. He was obsessed with Goldman and wrote this amazing thriller that, and he wrote it as a book first because he wanted to find out what the hell it was. He had a million ideas and it went on and on and on. And then I met him and I said, well, what about a script? Because you took his 400 or 500 pages and you see the screenplay is like the haiku version, or I don't know how you guys would say it. There's one idea that somehow captures your whole story that you can, because if it's got 10 ideas and 10 through lines and 10 ideas you're trying to say about life, it's not a film. It'll die. You'll never get it into that format because screenplays are brutal efficiency. So I would suggest to get it out in full as get the whole thing out of you as a novel where you have no constraints other than the truth of the material. Then look at it and say, if someone said, what's it about? And you could crystallize it in one beautiful phrase, that's your movie, and that's what, everything that's not that has to go out of the screenplay, and you just pick that. I heard this really cool thing Danny Boyle said the other day about what 127 hours, he said something like, I wanted to make a great action movie about a guy who can't move. And I was like, it's got to be that kind of concept where it's so clear. It doesn't have to be catchy like that. I mean, that doesn't hurt, but it has to be so concise and amazing. If you can find that way to describe any story and any idea, then it could be a screenplay. And so I think that would be a good way to explore. If you try to find the screenplay in it and it wants to be Gone with the Wind, you're gonna go crazy, and you're gonna need a lot of therapy, because it's trying to translate something to a format that doesn't want it. And
Well, he's talking about the spine, I think, of it. In the novel, you can sort of lay it all out, but for a script where every word becomes precious, because you'd be amazed how quickly that 120 pages just gets used up. And you have to have the spine of what out of all of this most closely embraces the entire shape and sums it up. And that's your theme, that's the spine of the story. Like for Tootsie, I remember Sidney Pollack saying, until I had the sentence in my head, by becoming a woman, I learned how to be a better man. It is as soon as he had that, he knew how to, that was the spine of the movie, right? So that's what you need to find, and sometimes in the telling of the whole thing and the regurgitating of it as a novel, you'll be able to then sort through and sift. It's like the puke version. Say, well, this is a bit of ham, I don't like ham, you know, or whatever.
Well, we've run out of time, so please give our guests a round of applause.